Hello, mixtresses and mixters. This is Mixtress Ray. You're watching Mixtress video. So I am following up on my Tarot Throwback 2002 hashtag. And I'm going to show you the decks that I was intending to use, let you know whether or not I use them, and probably pull a card from each one. Let you know my experience with using the ones that I did, and probably pull a card from each one as well. Okay, so let's just maybe start with the ones that I didn't use. Let's do that. So I did not end up using Cosmic Tribe, so I don't have any experiences to report with that. So I won't pull a card from this one. But my Cosmic Tribe is in here. So basically the way that I did this challenge is that anything that was available by 2002, so I was going by 20 years ago, because that's the way that I have my podcast structured. I review and recap every episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer exactly 20 years after its original air date. So that was my logic. Oh, I didn't get out the Oracle decks. Let me do that. Here's one. Where is the others? Where are the others? Okay, and then this. Okay, sorry, I just realized I didn't get out the Oracle decks. I am lately realizing, I mean, I've always known that Oracle is not quite as important to me, but lately it's been just like even more pronounced. I just don't even use Oracle decks. I use them for client readings for other people, and I haven't been using them at all otherwise, interestingly. Anyway, interesting to me only, probably. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly discuss the ones I did not use and set them aside. So, Cosmic Tribe, I did not use. It just didn't feel called to use it. I mean, I basically was getting out every single deck that would have been available by 2002. So this is a lot to work with, considering I've only been doing it for about 3 weeks. This is Fairies Oracle. I did not end up using that, but it's sticking around because I am altering my project for the last week, which I'll discuss afterwards. So I'm going to just put it in my little holder down there. Okay. Goddess Oracle, would have been able to use that, but I didn't. Not even for client readings. I forgot it was there or something. What else? This is Tantric Dakini. I did not end up using this. The rest of these I used. Okay, so let's just kind of go from least used to most used here. I did use, okay, I think next one will be Crow's Magic. Crow's Magic, I think I used for like a day or two, just like pulling a daily draw or something like that. It wasn't, I didn't decide to use it for any real length of time, and I didn't use it for any client readings. I did actually get several client readings in the last month, which was nice. So I was able to, you know, really see what works within this group of decks for client readings. You know, I already knew that Rider-Waite-Smith works well for client readings, and I already knew that Aquarium Tarot works great for readings, but I also, there was another surprise in here, which I'll show you when we get to it, but I'm just going to ask Crow's Magic real quick how it feels about our current working relationship. King of Cups and Death. So our current working relationship is good and it's stable, but it's changing. Okay. All right. Come through. This is what I do. I talk to my tarot decks. I say, come through, and other phrases I learned from drag queens. Okay, so that's Crow's Magic. I did work with it a little bit. I would say Rider-Waite-Smith is the other one that I just kind of like, I got out. I used it for client reading. And I think I also used it for like a little mini reading for myself, just got it out and played with it, that kind of thing. But I don't think, I didn't spend much time with it. I'm so used to like more modern decks that are more difficult to shuffle. But this one being so easy to shuffle, it's like I forget and I put too much hand strength into it, and then the cards are just flying everywhere. So, good old yellow box, plaid back, Rider-Waite-Smith. How are you feeling about our current relationship? I'm not going to take all three of those. Just going to take these two. We work together. We can always start over. Okay. I like that. I will say, like, I did not feel inspired by this deck at all. Love the shuffle of this one because it's one of the older ones that's like just soft with no finish on them, and it just shuffles extremely well. So I love touching this deck, and the imagery is very clear, which you're not going to be able to tell since I'm using this like old camcorder filter and I refuse to stop. But it's very clear and beautiful line work on this baby. So, you know, I felt a little underwhelmed by this deck, but again, it's not one that's going to like leave my collection or anything. It's perfectly serviceable when you need it to be, and it doesn't demand any more from me than that, you know? Oh, another one that's not pictured that I didn't really use is Nefertari Tarot, because I think I'm letting that one go. It's currently in my purgatory, which is why I didn't think to get it out. It's not really doing it for me. Let me know if you have my via email, or if you are already someone that texts with me on a regular basis, text me. And let me know if you're interested in Nefertari Tarot, because I would love to just send it to someone, you know? Okay, there's that. What else? Going from least used to most used. I guess this would be the next one in the category of, I did use it several times. This is the deck that usually lives in my purse, Halloween Tarot. I did use it for several readings for myself at work, because that's what tends to happen. Like on a lunch break or something, I will do a little reading for myself just to get through the day. I'll be like, what do I need? What do I need? What attitude do I need to have for the rest of the day? That kind of thing, you know? Okay, Halloween Tarot. I almost don't even need to ask Halloween Tarot how our relationship's going, because our relationship is great. Our relationship's wonderful. I love this deck so much. It's effortless, and it's cute, and it's Halloween vibes, which is me. Like, that was the thing that was said to me a lot as a goth teenager. Like, it's not Halloween, they would say to me as I'm like walking through the halls looking like I look. It's like, nope, every day is Halloween, bitch. Three of Pumpkins and Knight of Imps. So yeah, we work great together, and we're still moving right along together. Swiftly and with confidence. Halloween Tarot is my companion when I'm at work, which means that we kind of have a trauma bond, right? Not to say that my work is traumatic, but you know how it is whenever you're an introvert or you're neurodivergent or whatever, if you work with the public, it's a difficult relationship sometimes. And sometimes it can feel really, it can be really anxiety inducing. So Halloween Tarot gets me through it. And I need to remember to put this back in my purse. So I definitely worked with that during this challenge. Set it over here so that way it screams at me that it's out of place on my way out of this room. Let's see. Going from like least used to most used here. I think Aquarium Tarot would be next. You know what? I mean, in general, I use this deck somewhat frequently, but I did use it for a client reading or a patron reading. I think I used it for a patron reading. One or two of my weekly Patreon readings, I think. I like this deck. It's just one of those, another effortless one for me. It's just very usable. It's pretty. It's easy to read, and I just like it. It doesn't demand anything of me. Like in a recent comment I got, someone was talking about how some of their decks have some items have a soul and some don't, and I thought that was really rang true for me. Like, some of my decks feel like they have a soul, therefore I have to really resonate with them. We have to be soulmates. If a deck has a soul, we have to be soulmates, or I let them go. But I have many decks in my collection that don't have a soul, therefore they're demanding nothing of me. So as long as I kind of like them, it's good enough for me. Whereas the ones that have a soul, I have to be in love with them in order to keep them. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it makes sense to me. So how are we doing? 3 of Rods. We're still building our relationship. I've had this deck less than a year. And it felt like it was like I didn't even need to build a relationship with this deck. It was just like, okay, all right, we're good. Again, I don't, not to say that, like, this one could be someone else's, like, soul deck, but for me personally, this deck does not have, like, a heavy energy of any kind, you know? Okay, next. The rest of these decks, these are the 4 that I used the most during this Tarot Throwback 2002. Let's start with the Oracle deck. This is Morgan's Tarot. And I use this it's gotten to the point where I use this for like every client reading. This is kind of, lately I have only been using this Oracle deck for client readings. Not just during this challenge, but just in general. Like, it seems like I've just kind of naturally fallen into a pattern wherein I pick a tarot deck to use for whatever client I'm doing a reading for. And then at the end of the reading, I'll suddenly think to myself, oh shit, I haven't used any Oracle decks. Because I used to use like a handful of Oracle decks for every client reading. But now I'll just be like, oh shit, I forgot to use an Oracle deck. And I'll get this one out and I'll pick one card from this one as sort of like the sum up final message, yeah. And it usually does a great job at that, because especially if because this deck can go deep, but it's not super serious, and almost every card that is deep you can also laugh at it at the same time. So especially if I've had like a really heavy reading with a client, I can pull this deck out as sort of the final message, and it's just amazing. In fact, I think I want to do that. I want to save that for our final message. How about that? I'm going to do that. Just move it over here. Okay. these are the three that I worked with the most. Okay, so I'll start with this one because I didn't spend like a week with this deck personally, Nefertari's Tarot, but I use this for a lot of client readings and patron readings and things like that. Readings for others. And this, I mean, I have used it in the past for readings for other people, but it's not like one that I normally think of. Whenever I'm like, I actually have a little section on my shelf of like 3 or 4 decks that I pretty frequently use for client readings. And this was not among them, but now that I've done this challenge, this is going next to those other decks because it's actually, I don't know, it just, as far as like reading for others, it works really well for that because it's beautiful. It actually, like, I mean, you might look at this and think this isn't a serious deck. This is just like a, you know, gold blingy Egyptian flavored, fake antiqued, aged, you know, it doesn't look like it's that serious, but it has consistency to it. The aces are all an animal. The knights are all a horse. You know, there's consistency to this deck. There's like things that you can go with intuitively. And this is definitely like, so the last week, spoiler alert, I guess, for the last week of my challenge that I'm doing for myself, my Tarot Throwback challenge that I'm doing for myself, I am going to work with only decks that I actually had in 2002. So this is not one I did have in 2002. However, I had Egyptian Tarot, which was by the same artist. And if I had known about this one, if I had had this one instead, I think my tarot journey would have been more productive. Because this one is one that she made, this artist, Silvano something. It's not even on the fucking box. It's back in the day when they didn't even put the artist name on the box, but it's Silvano something. Oh yeah, it's probably on the Silvana Alazia. So same artist that did Egyptian Tarot that I actually did have in 2002. But this one was, the Egyptian Tarot was created in like the late 80s and this was late 90s. And this one's far superior. I mean, I keep Egyptian Tarot for sentimental reasons because it is the only deck, the actual deck that I still have from then. But if I were choosing between them, it would be Nefertari, absolutely. But anyway, what I discovered during this challenge is that this deck reads very, very well. It is surprising, I would say. Okay. Our relationship, 6 of Swords. Yeah. I like it. I do. I really like this deck, actually. And this was one of those, you know, one of those situations that, like, the way that I acquired this deck makes me happy. You know, I have a witchy store that I've been going to since I was a teenager. It's still there, guys. It's still there. And I went there. It was the day I got my septum pierced, which that's why I remember the exact date. July 31st, 2021. And we went to the witchy store. I was there with some friends and I got my septum pierced. And then we went to the witchy store and I had been wanting this deck for like a couple of years. But it was always so expensive. Like to buy it new, it was like $45, something like that. But they had it in the used bin, which this was the first day that I had discovered that there was a used bin at my witchy store. I just happened to walk up while someone else was going through it. And this deck was in there. And it was like less than $20. And it's like, I think it's like a first printing, actually. Because they don't have these backs anymore. Because because you can kind of see, like, if you look closely, you're not going to be able to tell on this video probably, but if you look closely, you can see sort of the embossing of the cards. So if you know the images well enough, you can kind of tell what they are from the backs of the cards, which is probably why they changed the backs. But anyway, that one was my surprise of the month because it just worked so well. Then I had a little tarot study group where we worked with Voyager Tarot together. So I worked with Voyager Tarot for a week or two, just doing daily draws and other readings, etc. And I got to know it better. Like, I've for sure, like, not really gotten to know it since getting it. And I definitely got to know it better. It is a well thought out tarot deck, actually. It came out in the 80s. And if you like collage style decks, this is a historic one to have, and it's still in print, and it's a good time, for sure. For sure. I don't think we're gonna be like best friends, but I think we're gonna be good acquaintances, you know? We're gonna be happy to see each other when we do see each other, even if that's only once a year, you know? So I didn't like create a serious bond with this deck this month, but I was a little before this month started, before I started doing this challenge, I was thinking about letting this deck go. Because when I have a deck for several months and I haven't bonded with it yet, that's usually what happens. I mean, truly, I sometimes, if I don't bond with a deck immediately, I let it go immediately. Okay. Two of Wands and Woman of Cups. Okay. So we're still at the beginning of our journey. We could go either way, but we're going towards, anytime I see Queen of Cups, Woman of Cups, whatever, I know that this deck is going to read for me well. So that's an indicator that, like, you know, we could still go either way, but don't let me go yet. So I used that one quite a bit, but the one that I used the most, the one that I was using for like a week before I even decided on this challenge, is Tarot of the Cat People. And you know what? I'm not gonna get it out. I'm not gonna get it out, and I'm not gonna make Tarot of the Cat People perform on camera right now. Because another comment that I got recently was someone talking about, like, are there certain things that you keep for yourself that you don't share with others? And I thought about that, and it's just like, you know, I usually am very much an open book, but I think it would be a good idea for me to keep some things sacred. And that's not to say that I'm making a definitive decision right now to never show Tarot of the Cat People on film again, but that could be the case, because this is a deck that is very personal to me, and I have already showed it many times. I've already talked about how I feel about it. I've already talked about what it means to me many times, so maybe I don't need to talk about it anymore. So, Tarot of the Cat People I used the most out of any deck in this challenge. I used it almost the entire time, and I love it. Okay, final message from Morgan's Tarot before I talk about how I'm approaching the last week of my challenge, because I'm planning to stop probably the 29th of August. I don't know. I guess I could, you know, just kind of hold on those last couple of days and just make it through the rest of August. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Okay, our final message from Morgan's Tarot about this chunk of the challenge. Oh, it's just a symbol. It's just a wheel. Let's see what the guidebook says, because I always read that. This is a deck that I always read the guidebook. The Whirling Golden Wheel. This is the symbol of all that is constantly turning and cannot be understood. Awareness of the whirling golden wheel allows the rider to relax in spite of the inevitable friction. Yeah, so I mean, this is kind of a Wheel of Fortune almost, right? That's hilarious. See how, like, that is a good example of, like, at the end of a really, let's say that you bought a reading from me. Here I can promote myself right now. Linktree/Mixtress let's say you bought a reading from me and we just really got into it. You know, we were like doing some shadow work. We were talking about difficult shit. And then at the very end, we get this card. You know, you can kind of laugh at that. You can kind of be like, okay, well, the wheel keeps on turning. Sometimes you know where it's going and sometimes you don't, you know? So that is one of the reasons why lately Morgan's Tarot has become, I have 3 decks that are hanging on the wall. One over there, Marigold Tarot. One over here is my Mixtress Oracle that I made myself. And Morgan's Tarot. Those are the 3 that are at reach at all times in my little tarot closet. I mean, I have others that I can easily get to. There's always like whatever tarot deck I'm currently working with is on a little shelf right there. But for the most part, it's you know, those 3. Okay, so the last week of my Tarot Throwback Challenge, what I am doing is I am working only with the decks that I had in 2002 that I still have. So back then I had 5 decks. I had Egyptian Tarot, Ukiyo Tarot, Fairies, Brian Froud's Fairies Oracle. I had H.R. Giger's Majors Only deck, which was basically just art from H.R. Giger that were repurposed into tarot. And it had kind of a chunky, like, psychoanalytic, very Freudian, Jungian guidebook. And I miss the guidebook, actually, but I do not miss those cards because H.R. Giger didn't used to scare the fuck out of me, but he does now. Now that I'm older and I can see, and I'm, like, psychologically picking apart the man's mind by looking at his art, like, I can't handle it anymore, so that's why I got rid of it. And I'm kind of sad that I wish I would have just sold the cards and kept the book, because the book was, like, probably pretty outdated by today's standards, but I really enjoyed it at the time. Anyway. And I had Thoth. So of those 5, I still have 3. I still have Egyptian Tarot. Let's show that first. And this is the only one that I actually still have the copy that I had then. The only difference is I bought a second copy so that I could replace the cards that were missing. So I have the second copy. It's kind of easy to see. It's this one, the wider cards, because this deck has been through it. So this is the only one that I still have the actual copy that I had in 2002. So I don't even know if I'll end up using it in this last week, but it's one that I can use if I want to. And I do not have the copy that I had then, unfortunately, but I still have Brian Froud's Fairies Oracle. So this is the one Oracle deck that I will be allowing myself to use at the last week of this challenge. So if you do buy a reading from me this week, I'll be using that, which is weird because I might not even use an Oracle deck, actually, because Fairies Oracle is not one that I've ever used for someone else. And it would be awkward to do so because it's more of a deep dive deck. Like, this is one of the oracle decks that I would pull a card from, and then I would read the guidebook and just like sit and meditate or journal or whatever. Like, yeah, then that's not conducive to doing a reading for someone else, you know? So I don't know, if you do buy a reading from me this week, I might end up either cheating and using Morgan's Tarot as the oracle deck, or yeah, I might end up cheating when it comes to client readings in general, being that the only 2 tarot decks I have to work with for this last week are Egyptian Tarot, which is, I mean, you saw it. Sorry, but that was probably loud. I mean, the majors are fine, but the minors are very, very pippish. I mean, I know tarot well enough that, like, this will probably be the one that comes out for client readings this week. So you will be getting a reading from me from my oldest tarot deck. But the real deck that I'm going to be working with this week is Thoth. Because this deck has boomeranged back into my life so many times that I just, last October for my birthday, I ended up getting it from the witchy store, and it was like I was just surrendering to it. It was like it was in that used bin, and I was like, oh fuck, okay, here we go. And it's weird because I just like begrudgingly got it. It's like, okay, I'll give this a try, because I've had it for the last like 22, 23, 24, I don't know exactly, 20 to 25 years of my life, I've had a copy of this. And sometimes I don't have a copy of it for a couple years. But it's the longest it's ever not been in a house that I've lived in my life is maybe 2 years, I think. Because the times in my life when I didn't have it, because I had given it up for a few years after the tornado, but my mom was in possession of it, so it was still, a copy was in the house because I was living with her for several years after the tornado. And then when I moved into the house that I live in now, the house that Michael and I bought together, I didn't have a copy of it for the first, for the first 4 years we were living here, I did not have a copy of this deck. And then I got it again, and then I got rid of it for another couple years, and then it came back again. And then I decided that I fucking hated its guts, and I put out a video about it. It hates me back, see? And I decided that it hates my guts, and I almost got rid of it, but Grace talked me out of it. And I gave it like a pretty long timeout. Like, it's been in a purgatory space in timeout for like, at this point, like 6 to 8 months, 8 to 10 months. Yeah, a while. And I just got it back out in order to do the challenge the way that both Grace and Anna are conceptualizing it, which is, what decks would I have been using at that time or was using at that time? So that is the last week of this challenge. I'm using Thoth as my daily draw. So here's my little card stand that I usually have. This is my card of the month. This is the current Deacon, 8 of Pentacles that we are all in right now astrologically. And then my card of the day is Prince of Wands. So here we go. It's very weird for me to choose to work with Thoth. I'm very uncomfortable with it. And it's like, to a certain extent, you know, like I said in that video where I thought I was breaking up with it forever, I said, I've tried to work with this deck for 20 years. I'm done trying. I'm letting it go. But I haven't let it go yet, so it's still haunting me. So we'll see how it goes. I didn't even necessarily want to talk about this on camera, but it happened anyway. Cool. Awesome. I didn't mean for this video to be 35 minutes long. Okay, thanks for watching.